What's up, everyone? I'm Paxton Schwartz, and you're watching The Fast Lane, the show where we dive into high speed stories and thrilling tales from all around the world of racing. Today, I'm joined by Tmarc Jones, a seasoned high speed performance driving instructor and HPDE group leader with the National Autosport Association since 1997. Tmarc has won NASA's Outstanding Instructor Leadership Award twice and has dedicated over 2 decades to mastering and teaching the art of high speed driving, making him a revered figure in the motorsport community. When he's not driving or instructing, he puts his racing acumen to use as a consultant, working with clients ranging from track day enthusiasts to high profile projects like Netflix's Fastest Car Show. Join us as we delve into his extensive experience, racing wisdom, and passion for driving excellence. T Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the kind words and the great introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much. We did a little research. I didn't know you have been an instructor for over 20 years. Before we dive into all the details that come with that, can you share with anyone at home who maybe isn't so familiar with you, like a brief summary or your involvement in motorsport and how you got into the racing world?
Sure. Yeah. So it started when I was a young child. My father used to take me to a place called Summit Point Raceway. It's still in
Okay.
existence. I originally grew up on the East Coast. So Summit Point Raceway, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Summit Point Raceway was in or is in West Virginia. So it was a relatively short drive from Baltimore to West Virginia. But first experience at the track, I was probably about 5 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so if you can imagine just your 5-year-old kid, there's race cars, the race cars are right in front of you. I mean, it was an amazing thing. And, most little kids like cars, but then you
Right.
take that and then you add the actual racing component. And quite literally since then, I've been a fan of motorsport, just absolutely love it. So fast forward, got a little bit older, moved from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast of the United States.
Hmm.
I settled in the San Francisco Bay Area. Actually lived in San Francisco for a while, and at that point, that's when I really got into track driving.
Okay.
Did my first event. One of my first events was with the National Autosport Association in the HPDE1 program.
Okay.
And so that sort of added to or tied together my love for motorsports with the ability to do that, to drive and be in the same environment that the people I've watched on TV.
Absolutely.
It was nice to say, oh, yeah, this racing driver that I followed for years raced on this same track 2 months
Exactly.
ago, and I'm here driving on it. So it's a very cool thing. So I did that for a while, started with the NASA HPDE1 program. And for those who aren't aware, HPDE stands for High Performance Driver Education. And it is a program set up to give people the basics and the foundation for high performance driving. And then the numbers just correspond to the level of experience. So
Hmm.
HPDE1, novice, HPDE2 is beginner, HPDE3 is intermediate, and HPDE4 is advanced. So I started at HPDE1, and then worked my way through the curriculum and got up to HPDE4. I did that for a while. And then actually, when my daughter was born, I made the decision, or when my daughter was born, that having a child changes a lot of things for
Right.
me. And for me, the calculus was I wanted to, if I'm going to the track, I wanted it to be in something, in a greater service, something greater than just me driving around. So at that point, I said, well, instructing is a nice way to give back to the community. It's
Absolutely.
a nice way to be in service of something greater. It's a nice way to help people. And, it's something I can be proud of to tell my daughter, like, hey, honey, I'm at the track, I'm instructing. So all of those things contributed to my wanting to become an instructor. And I absolutely love it. I have had the opportunity to instruct with NASA, many other organizations, including, as you mentioned, Lightspeed, track events, Hooked on Driving.
Hmm.
I've done some private instruction as well. And then a lot of that also culminated with the work I did on the Netflix TV show.
Right.
Oh, yeah, so that's kind of how it went. Started as a driver, migrated through the program, then wanted to become an instructor so that I could continue to give back to the community.
How cool and full circle that you started with the NASA HPDE one, and then that's where we met you was through our track
Yes,
days.
yes.
Um, so you've been an instructor for, like we said, over 20 years. In my experience, having a good teacher can make or break an experience for you, and it can be the difference between, dropping a hobby or becoming fully addicted to it. And since you mentioned it, I wanted to ask you, is there a particular instructor that stands out to you, or who you could credit as being the reason that you're still so full-fledged into it today?
Yeah, actually, he's still a current instructor. It's Bill Dockery.
Okay.
He's still a NASA instructor, and I worked with him early on, and just tons of experience. I used to be a motorcycle racer,
Okay.
and also race cars, and is still very active in the instructor community. So I would say I attribute a lot of my staying power to him. It's nice to go to the track and have him there and get to visit with him while I'm doing the instruction.
Yeah. And so when you guys are working with all of these newcomers, especially like in the HPD one, these are a lot of these people, it's their very first time out. So what are the key principles you emphasize when you're teaching new drivers? Like how do you tailor your instructions to different driving levels? Is there certain distinctions you'll notice between people at one group or another? Or like, yeah, what's your instructor experience on that side?
A great question. Really, the primary thing is, and the approach I like to take is I tailor the instruction to the way the student learns most effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll add, there are essentially three learning types. There's kinesthetic, which is learning by doing. These are oversimplifications,
Yeah.
but you'll get the idea. So kinesthetic is learning by doing. Auditory is learning by hearing. If someone describes or tells you how to do something, some people are able to learn that way. And then the other is visual, seeing someone do something. So the first thing I do, or one of the first things I do, is ask what type of learner the student is, and then from there, my coaching and instructing is based on that learning style. So if someone says, well, I'm a more kinesthetic learner, I like to learn by doing. Okay, so we'll do things like when we're in the car, I'll say, okay, here's where you put your hands, here's how you adjust the shifter, here's how you actuate the shifter, even paddle shifting. There's a method to doing that.
Okay.
There's a way that you turn that. So those sorts of things, if someone's a kinesthetic learner, someone's auditory, while we're out on track and they're driving, I'll be giving commands as they're going around the circuit, so they can hear a command, and then that is coupled with an action, and that helps them learn that way. And then if someone is visual, I'll do things like lead follow exercise, which I think is what we did.
Right.
Where I'll place my car in front of their car for the purposes of showing and demonstrating visually where to place the car on track. And in so doing, where you see how to place a car on track, it follows that you will do the right things in the car to get you to place the car at that particular section of the track. So to answer your question directly, I ask what type of learning the student prefers or what type of learner they are,
Mm-hmm.
and then I tailor the learning to that. And then the typical thing is nowadays, it's interesting over the time that I've been instructing, just the amount of knowledge that people has available to them has changed as well. So people do come in now with a bit more understanding of what the track driving is. There's so many videos out there. There's so much content out there where you can at least see what it looks like. So I don't get too many people get in the car and, do the hand on top of the steering wheel and arm out the window. But believe it or not, that does happen quite a bit. Or it used to happen quite a bit. Not as much.
Yeah, I think that with like YouTube especially, they have direct ride-alongs to like learn a racing line before you've even visited a track.
Right.
Do you ever run into an issue where people maybe come in thinking they know a bit more than they do, and then they kind of overstep, or have you had good experiences so far with people being willing to take in the knowledge?
Great question. I've been fortunate that most people have a desire to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and are able to, if not ego, are able to sort of put themselves in a learning capacity.
Okay.
So I mean, it has happened where someone says, well, I think I know more than you do. And there are ways that I can address that. I don't know if we need to get into a conversation.
We got time.
But there are ways to do that. Generally speaking, what happens is someone says, well, I think I want to take a turn this way. And I might say, well, may I demonstrate something? And then from the passenger seat, I'll say, I'll, with their permission, take the wheel. And generally the car completely settles down. They say, oh, you kind of do know what you're doing. But it's not about me. It's like, okay, this thing that you thought made sense because, you see something, student may not be aware of chassis dynamics and how cars operate at speed with all the forces. So they may have a thinking that, oh, I saw this on video and I can do that in my car.
Yeah, I
You
did
may
this in
not
my
do
sim.
it. Right, I did it in the sim, or there are videos online, but you don't know. There's a lot that's not necessarily not available to you online. And then the other thing, the main thing is everyone has a different driving style. If I was a
That's true.
dance instructor, everyone has a different dancing style, right? So everyone has a different driving style. What you see on a video, that person's driving style may not be yours, so you have to keep that in mind. So to answer your question directly, I've been fortunate to not have too many cases where students are not receptive and open to the coaching or the teaching. And in the rare cases that they do, there's some techniques I have in place, basically kind of the demonstrating of things, or taking them out with me and they say, oh, okay, now I see what you're trying to convey.
Yeah, okay. What makes a good student in your eyes? A lot of our followers are people who, even still, after following us for how long, they haven't taken that first step to get out to the track. And for a lot of people, I try to tell them it literally just takes getting out there. Obviously, you want to make sure you've got like the safety bit of it handled as far as brakes and fluids and whatnot.
Right.
But once they're out there, do you have any tips for like aspiring people who are maybe just trying to get over that edge to get to the track?
Quite literally, just get out there and do it.
Right.
Get out there and do it. And the main thing is go within your comfort zone. The nice thing about these programs is they're designed to get you out, get you onto the track in a safe and controlled environment.
Exactly.
And early on, to be perfectly candid, you'll be driving. It's safe. Well, I'll say two things. Typically, you're driving at about freeway speeds, by and large. Even on the fastest straights, you'll get maybe slightly higher than freeway speeds at some tracks in the early groups. So it's not. So you've had the experience driving a car at those speeds. So kind of take so calm, approach it with some calm and relaxation, and understanding that it doesn't take much to get out there, at least initially, and really just do it. The best thing to do is put yourself into the conversation, and then once you're in the conversation, everything opens up from there.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of people get caught up on, oh, I need this mod, I got to do this, but you're not breaking any records on your first day. Like you said, you might not even get above freeway speeds. It's really about getting out there, getting comfortable, and then you have to get the experience before you can really go on to like a point by or open passing as you go up to those higher levels, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And one thing, just very quickly on modifications, you can spend an average modification on the average car. Let's say for whatever reasons, I think the suspension, the engineers at the company that built the car that I'm driving, I think I know more than they do about suspension. So I'm going to go out and buy a brand new suspension. The cost of that suspension and the cost to put it in, even if you put it in yourself, that same investment or that same expenditure of resources, you could probably get a year's worth of track day.
Seriously.
Seat time. And the seat time is what you need. Modern cars, especially modern performance cars, do not need any further modifications beyond what they were delivered, from the factory, at least in the early groups. As you start doing it more, you find out, okay, now I'm driving at a pace where I'm over stressing the stock systems. But to start out, you don't need to make any modifications. I tell people, put gas in the car. That's it. Just put gas in the car. Come out to the track. I mean, make sure it's, make sure your fluids and everything. But what do I need to do to it? Put gas in.
That's it.
And bring some water to drink. That's about it.
I love it. So I was doing a bit of stalking leading up to this research, and I saw that, we've seen the Porsche forever at the track, at least since as long as I've been going. But I saw before that, was it a Mazda Speed 6 you had?
I still have, Mazda Speed 6.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I used to drive that in time trial competition. So, so that was a lot of fun. And then before that, I had a 911 Carrera 4, which unfortunately, I don't know if you've seen the pictures. It blew up on the track while I was driving.
Oh my gosh. I actually missed that as I was swiping through. What happened there?
So came into turn 10 at Thunder Hill and blew a freeze plug, and hot oil shot, well, oil is hot, the motor was hot, shot on the exhaust manifold, combusted. It didn't blow up, but I mean, the motor's in the back, so the car was fully involved. And I ended up driving it for about another minute or so, trying to find the safety crew. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear it wasn't catastrophic or ended with you in a wall. We've seen that happen a few times at Thunder Hill.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Stuff happens. I mean, I've smacked up cars. It happens. It's one of the things that happen, unfortunately. But that day I was lucky.
Have you seen a change, or maybe like what advancements have you seen in the safety aspect of both like being built into the cars? Like you said, modern performance cars have crazy technology built into them, but also as far as the safety built around the track. Like there's tow trucks on hand, EMS ready to go. Could you talk a little bit about how that's evolved over time, or is it always you feel been where it's at?
Well, just safety's evolved because society's gotten more safe.
Yeah.
So, yes. So there's always been, I'll say it this way, there's always been a commitment with NASA in particular, always been a commitment to safety at the standards that safety was at that time.
Okay.
So I started back in the late 90s. So NASA was committed to safety, state of the art, late 90s, in the late 90s.
Right.
Now that we're in, 21st century, in the early 2020s, safety is now even that much more critical, and NASA is up to that point. So, and all of the facilities have done that. They've migrated over time.
Okay.
And then the cars themselves are extremely, from a performance standpoint, a lot of the systems that are in the cars are very safe. They give, particularly with performance cars, they give an opportunity to explore some of the performance envelopes of the car in as safe a manner as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the stability control systems, the traction control systems, uh, the single wheel actuating systems, whether they break a wheel individually or whatever the case may be, those systems are over time have become pretty good at maintaining a safe output. I mean, you can't override the laws of physics,
Right.
but these do give a nice safety net, and I do recommend strongly that anyone, particularly starting out, keep those systems full
Right.
in the car while they're learning.
No traction control off day one.
No, I won't. And here's the thing: as an instructor, I will not get in the car if you are a novice or beginner driver and you turn those off, because you're not yet at that level.
Have you had any scenarios in which someone was maybe trying to go beyond the limits or beyond their own limits while you were giving them instruction? Like, how did that end up?
Touch wood, I haven't had any incidents with me in the car where I've hit
Okay.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have had situations where I've had to pull people off the track and sort of calm them down,
Okay.
and sort of re-explain and reset expectations
Right.
about what we're actually doing, and then resume. Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of my duty as an instructor, because it's not just about my safety, it's your safety.
Exactly.
So if you're the driver and I'm the instructor and we're doing something unsafe, well, it's going to be unsafe for both of us. So it's my job to remove us from that unsafe state and put us into a more safe and sustainable state, basically.
And so, speaking of like safe, sustainable environments, I wasn't initially going to bring this up, but as we're talking about the modern performance cars and their capabilities, you had a really great and insightful comment on a recent post about street racing versus track racing. And I think that for a lot of people who maybe haven't seen that, could you kind of just reiterate what you were saying about why, obviously, the benefits of going to the track, and then how, really on the street, there's no way to test your car?
Just that the modern car, number one, every car out there built in the past 15 years can easily reach and exceed 100 miles an hour.
Easily.
So easily, I mean, without trying. Every car. So what's the point? What happens is street driving tends to be a short distance contest of misaligned bravery. I would say bravado.
Okay.
Where it's like, oh, I can
Beautiful.
I can accelerate up to this group of traffic, and then we'll just weave through traffic together. What are you doing? All you're doing is scaring people. You're not putting any load in the car. You're certainly not doing anything that's going to transfer. None of that stuff transfers to the track. I can tell you definitively. Someone says I'm a street racer, I can tell you they're going to be a terrible track driver.
Yeah, it's just a high speed game of chicken.
It's a high-speed game of chicken with everything to lose.
Yeah.
Everything to lose. Yeah, just I don't recommend it. I don't do it. I get my car. I have people who want to engage in things, and there's certain things I can do to make that not happen. But yeah, I don't. I refuse to. I do not do it. I do not condone it. I don't think it's a wise idea. And if you want to go fast, go to the track. And the nice thing about the track is you can drive as fast as you can. And that's a fun thing.
Right.
You get to drive as fast as you can for 20 minutes. So a lot of times you think you're fast. Okay, we'll do it for 20 minutes.
Hmm. Yeah, and watch how it wears down or how you
It's
lose
harder to do than
focus.
you think. Yeah. I mean, I'm in shape, and I'm like, wow, this is
It's
plenty
taxing.
of time in this session. Yeah.
I'm like, at first the 20 minutes doesn't sound like enough, but at the end of it, you're like, get me, I need a break. Where's my water
Need a
at?
break. Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing was so surprised is like, oh, you think maybe this back road or this bit of twisty section, oh, here's where I can test my car. But again, I think people don't realize that streets were designed and engineered to be easy on your car, safe to drive. Maybe there's some twists here because we can't go through this person's land, but
Right.
it's not until you're on a racetrack that you see like something can be engineered to be harder to offset you. And then also, like you said, the skills are just non-transferable.
Right. And then I tell people this. I'm like, okay, but if somebody says, but I love driving my car, I love being in my car, and I love to drive it, and I drive on the street, okay, you can learn everything you need to learn in a car. Seat time, there are tons of skills you can work on. And I've said this in classroom settings.
Hmm.
On the street, obeying all posted limits with your family in the car, not disrupting any other families or individuals who are out there driving along with you. What do I mean by that?
Please.
So you're driving along, the speed limit 65, there's a car up in front of you. Okay, practice maintaining your distance, your pace from that car, and just use the throttle actuation to do that.
Hmm. Versus getting on the brakes every time you see a red light.
Yeah, right, or every time you see, or following too closely.
Hmm.
You know, if you're driving, you say, you know what, practice looking up and anticipating, look as far down the road as you can,
That's
and
a
then
great
see
one.
how many cars you can count in your periphery. And do, if let's say you're doing 40 miles an hour on the freeway, it's not very busy, right? Pick your head up. You say, okay, I'm going to count how many cars, how many green cars. I say, whatever. There are exercises that you can do to help things like your field awareness, your state of awareness, taking in more information.
Hmm.
Um, Work on not using the brakes. So that means you need to modulate the throttle. That means you need to learn closing speeds and distances. Learn how to, I mean, all learn this in driver's ed, just basic street driver's ed. Always make sure you have an out and
Hmm.
have a plan. Don't drive right next to, don't allow cars to drive, or don't drive right next to cars. So keep spacing in there. Understand that's all situational awareness. That stuff directly translates to the track.
Right.
And the other thing too is learn patience and humility, because you need it on the track.
Yeah.
So what people who have not been on a track before should understand is you're not out there all by yourself. You are sharing the track with other people, just like you share the road with other people. So if you get super impatient with people on the road, that's going to happen on the track.
Hmm.
So it's a good way. So if you want to take skills from the street and transfer them to the track, work on being a compassionate, courteous driver on the street, and that'll help you on the track. And then doing the same thing on the track will help you on the street. So again, if you feel you must do things on the street, there are many things you can do, again, at the posted limits, without breaking any traffic laws, without creating a dangerous situation for yourself or anyone else out on the road.
Beautifully said. I also think that, at least for me, who even may have once upon a time had a heavier foot, I think once you go to the track, it kind of can resettle you down because I think it becomes more clear to you. I'm not doing anything other than feeling some torque. You're just going quickly. There's nothing else changing.
Right. Yeah, I'm going fast. All you're doing is you're driving past people who are trying to get home or trying to get to their destination.
Not worried about you. Didn't know you
Right.
existed. You're not beating anybody.
You're right. And in your closing speed, you're 20, 30 miles an hour faster or whatever it is.
Hmm.
There's no place for it.
Agreed. All right, so I love talking about the track stuff, obviously, but as I was doing my research, I wanted to hear more about what's going on with all this Netflix stuff. I didn't know you had your own racing consulting business. I don't know which one of those you want to break into first, or maybe one led into the other, but could you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the Netflix was very exciting. That was interesting story. So initially, the let me kind of backtrack. The
Sure.
name of the show is Fastest Car,
Yes.
and it's still on there. So
I was about to
still
binge
on
it. I was
Netflix,
running
I
out of time
believe.
before
Yeah.
here.
So the premise of the show very quickly was we would take exotic car. So you pick the exotic, typically a hypercar exotic. So your McLaren, like high end McLarens, the faster Ferraris, the faster Lamborghinis, the those kinds of cars. and run them in a speed contest on a closed course, so sanctioned speed contest against home built cars.
Right.
The fastest car it's built. The tagline was built versus bought.
Right.
You go out and buy a car, somebody builds a car, well, which one is the fastest?
Mm-hmm.
So since the show had actual racing as a component of it, again, we created a closed quarter-mile circuit not a circuit, a quarter-mile course for these cars to race on.
Yeah.
And, we got up to 8 wide at one point.
What?
That was the first, yeah. I won't give it away, but the first season ended up with an 8-car wide quarter-mile race.
Okay.
It was pretty sick.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so they needed the show needed someone to help with the racing, to make sure the racing was safe, to make sure that the racing was actual racing, because a lot of the people who did the builds were in their own right racers.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of them were professional drag racers. Many of them were amateur racers.
Okay.
Many of them had racing businesses. So the show needed to have bona fides. This wasn't. So they needed bona fides. They needed to have credibility.
There you go.
With
Yeah.
the racing community, because the credibility showed up on camera. So I was responsible for me and a team. There was another guy on the show. His name is Morgan Combs, a longtime instructor, also with NASA.
Okay.
Northern California, a good friend of mine. So it was great working with him. And the two of us helped with getting the cars in, getting them staged, setting the tone for the competition, all the safety things, everything associated with having the program go off, or having the racing part of the program go off. Mm-hmm. Without any issues.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun. I guess the most gratifying thing for me was, if you say what was the best thing about the show for you?
I'm gonna get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. The best thing really was when the racers, and particularly their family members and their crews, came up to me and said, this is done. You're a professional. This is done the right way. And that's just nice. There's one guy in the first episode, his grandfather, they had a really close relationship, and his grandfather was like a old school racer from the 50s, like belly tank. If people know what that is. Belly tank is basically racers used to take the fuel tanks from airplanes, warplanes, like bombers.
Okay.
And put motors in them, because they were streamlined. Put motors in them and wheels, and you'd race them. So people would race anything, but I'm saying this guy was that old school, like into it.
Okay. And
he came up and he said, "Yeah, no, the way you did this is really, your crew, the way you guys did this was the right way to do it." And I felt that he was safe and taken care of, and I felt that you were creating a safe environment for everybody. I mean, racers want to go fast, but racers want to be safe.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. People think, no, safety is the main thing. So that was kind of the most gratifying thing. I mean, yeah, it was fun to be on TV, but it was also nice getting the confirmation that, yes, you do in fact know what you're doing.
Yeah, because I think even just not beyond racers, car enthusiasts are a very particular group, very judgmental group, and they want things to be done, quote unquote, the right way, or else it feels inauthentic. Right. And so I imagine that was a huge part of it. What goes into producing or setting up a drag race versus like a circuit track day? Yeah, so the circuit is easy because you get to the facility and it's already established. Mm-hmm. So, you go to Sonoma Raceway. Right. If you're going to run on the circuit, it's already there. So there's not, and the facility has all of the safety crews and flag stations and all of the facilities and amenities that are necessary to have an event go off. Mm-hmm. When you have to build a circuit, on an airstrip or in the Mojave Desert. Is that what you guys were doing?
That's what we did.
Okay.
Yes. So we had to do things like we had to make sure, which is kind of cool. We had to make sure that, you had the circuit with the course, but then there were safety components. Like there was a calculation as to where the camera could be, because it needed to be completely out of the way of any potential issues with cars. There had to be, we had to do certain things from a filming standpoint, like use a flag system, because I couldn't see the producers from the starting line. So there were interesting things like that you wouldn't think of, but that came into play when being part of the show, being part of the delivery of the show. Now, and the other thing is, I'm not an actor at all. I haven't been trained as an actor. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting because the director would tell me something, and I on this show, for whatever reasons, I mean, I worked directly with the director. It wasn't like an assistant. I mean, the director and the producers would tell me stuff, and I'd have to do it.
Okay.
And they'd say, "Okay, oh, you know what? We need that camera wasn't rolling, so we need you to say what you said again, and get everybody over here." And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Those cameras rolling, and again, I'm not an actor, so that was an interesting thing too. Just kind of being part of a Hollywood set, and just being part of that huge team environment. So to answer your question directly, so since we had to create the tracks, there was a lot involved in setting up the facility, setting up the safety, and setting up the stage, if you will, to have the run the event go off.
It almost sounds like they had you producing it.
Well, I didn't have any producer credits. I was just a guy, right? So I don't.
Yeah.
But yes, for all intents and purposes, and I was fortunate also to get some on screen, particularly in the first season.
Okay.
But yes, for all intents and purposes, the racing that you saw, I and my team was responsible for delivering that racing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things lately is everywhere beyond, well, F1, IndyCar, IMSA. I'm seeing racing popping up everywhere. I'm seeing merch in stores. I'm seeing TV shows. I'm seeing Netflix documentaries. Where do you see the future of racing going? Do you see it continuing to expand? I know there's issues with the Laguna Seca lawsuit. How do you see that going?
Well, the Laguna Seca, it's interesting because the Laguna Seca dynamic is becoming new to a whole new set of people. About 15 years ago, there was the same thing.
Oh, really?
It's kind of cycles through.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is interesting that this is what we're doing this again.
This is my first time around.
The global boom in racing, and that's kind of cyclical too, in a lot of ways. Just in the 80s, when I was a very, very small child, racing was big too. Like there was a huge amount of manufacturer involvement, particularly in IMSA and SCCA, kind of like we're seeing now.
Yeah.
I think the big boom that we're seeing with racing came about from the Netflix Drive to Survive series with Formula One.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, when we came out of the pandemic, motorsport was one of the first things to come back just by nature of the sport, because your competitors are the most individual, and everyone's wearing helmets. You could easily distance people. Now there were no fans in the stands when racing came about, and then Drive to Survive kind of came out in, I believe, the first season. Well, it was available at that time. It started before the pandemic, but people were shut in, so that was something to watch. And then they did a great job in showing the tension and the intrigue and the passion and the romance of racing. And I mean, racing, it's a great thing. To viewers and followers, if you've never been to, I mean, HPD is fun and driving your car on a track is fun. I invite you to go to a sanctioned big league race. And the nice thing about the Bay Area is all the major series come out here and race at some point. NASCAR, IMSA, IndyCar, they all race on Bay Area tracks. So racing's a magical thing.
It seriously is. And one of the things that blew my mind compared to a Formula One race versus going to an IMSA race, you can walk through the garages. You can see these teams prepping, watch the drivers get geared up. You really can experience a whole different side of things beyond what happens on TV on the racetrack. Like you said with Drive to Survive, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes and when they're not actually on the tarmac, Well, we've been having a great conversation because time's flying here. I don't want to keep you for too much longer. So just a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
Favorite track you've driven on?
Favorite track? Sonoma.
Oh, really?
That's hard to say. I like Sonoma. I also like Road Atlanta too.
Okay.
Yeah, Road Atlanta is fun. I'd say Sonoma number one, then Road Atlanta two.
What is it about Sonoma? Is it something about the layout, the history there?
I think the proximity and then the history. The proximity to history. I've driven Sonoma through multiple different configurations.
Okay.
Here's something. I've driven the 9-into-1 configuration, so 9 into 1. Anyone who's an old head who's watching this will be like, "Oh wow, you did 9-into-1." I won't say anything more about that.
Okay, I'll have to follow. We'll throw up a picture on screen here.
But yeah, just it's kind of the local track. It's the closest track to where I am in Oakland right now. When I was in San Francisco, it was the closest track. And believe it or not, before I got into HPDE driving, when I first moved to San Francisco, I knew that the track was, half an hour away, 45 minutes away. And I would just go up there just on a Saturday just to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And that was my first exposure, believe it or not. This was in the late 90s. So that was my first exposure to track driving. I had been to races and I knew what racing cars looked like. And I knew what showroom stock cars looked like.
Right.
Cars kind of look like at a distance what you would see on the street. And then I got up and I'm like, oh, wait, these cars have full interiors. Oh, wait, these people are not wearing Nomex suits. Wait a minute. These people are driving their own cars?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, how do I do that? And then here we are.
The rest is history. Absolutely. Do you have a dream car other than your beautiful red Porsche?
It's funny. I mean, I like Porsches. At some point, I'd like to get back into a 911 just because I like 911s.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm more experiential. So yeah, I mean, so I like Porsche, but I'm a Porsche fan in terms of love the cars, love the company, but also follow them like a sports team.
Right.
So
Penske.
Porsche, yeah. So Penske, Porsche, Manthey,
Yeah.
over time, Manthey, Penske, Porsche. Other teams in the past, Yost for a long time did Porsche stuff. So yeah, whoever is racing Porsche, I follow them like a sports team. So yeah, I'd say a 911.
Okay. Particular generation?
The latest.
Okay.
992 generation.
Yeah.
911.
They are beautiful.
Yeah, and I want to get either a 911T or a 911S. Probably a 911T because it already has a lot of performance capabilities already in it, and it's lighter than the S is. So,
Okay. Where do you stand on the EV versus internal combustion? Do you think we're going to be a EV future?
I embrace EVs. I think they're great. They're slightly different characteristics from internal combustion cars, but no, I'm not a quote unquote purist.
Okay.
So if it's a car, get out and drive it. I know a lot of people who run EVs. So happy to see them out at the track and feel that I'm an egalitarian when it comes to cars. So if there's a car you like and you want to run it, bring it out and run it. You like Lincoln Town cars and you want to bring them out on track?
I love it.
But bring them out there.
So that's the difference between a racing enthusiast and a car enthusiast. We just want to see you guys go. Get after it.
Just bring it, bring it and run it. Yeah,
That's the
I
energy.
tell people, not to knock Cars and Coffee or any of those car shows, but we like to sit around and look at them, then we take them out and use them.
And so my very first experience not driving just went with my brother. I literally called it the best version of a car show because there are the exotic cars out there. You see the Lamborghinis, you see the Ferraris, the Porsches get out. But yeah, they don't just sit in the track. They're not going to peel out around the curb. You get to watch them really get after it.
Right.
And especially sitting at turn 11, watching them come around, hit the downshifts, and then rip back down. Nothing compares.
Exactly. Well, and then imagine being on the track with them. That's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're chasing it down, or it's chasing you down.
Or it's chasing you down, or it's passing you. Yeah. No, I have a lot of fun stories. I mean, it's beyond the scope of our conversation here, but I got tons of just cool stories of nice, fun things that happened on track. Actually, one of them I'll just tell you real quick, at
Yeah, please.
Road Atlanta.
Okay.
It's in Brazelton, Georgia, about an hour north of the city of Atlanta. And, I'm driving, this was in the Mazda speed. So I'm driving, and the back straight's pretty long. Mm-hmm. In that car, I probably got up to about 130.
Okay.
In the Mazda.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how long the straight is.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm going, and it was a Trans Am Corvette. So 750 horsepower. I mean, just passed me. And I mean, saw him, everything was great. Passed me in the braking, in the braking zone. We got it sorted, all good. Everything was great. I was like, wow, that's cool. Car parked, driven by a 13-year-old kid. So I'm like, hey man, good on you.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. So it's fun to be out there. So you kind of asked, earlier in the conversation, what would you tell people who want to get out there? What's the appeal? Mm-hmm. Particularly if you've ever watched racing or you've started to watch racing or you've watched Drive to Survive or any of the documentary series, you get to participate on the same stage as those people. And that's a very unique thing about motorsports. One of the few things, imagine this, if you love the Niners, it would be unusual for you to play football at Levi State.
Would never happen.
I mean, if the Niners sanctioned something, maybe. But, I love Penske Porsche. They raced at Laguna Seca. 2 weeks later, I'll be driving at Laguna Seca.
Yeah.
So there's that sort of thing. So that to me is a very cool thing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, Tmarc, it's been fantastic having you on here. I really appreciate your time. Before we wrap up, could you share with anyone some exciting upcoming projects or where you'll be at, where they can follow you in your journey?
Oh, absolutely. So probably the biggest thing is I'm on social. So I'm eponymous on social, which means all my socials follow my name. So Tmarc Jones.
Okay.
On Instagram's kind of the main thing I do.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a small YouTube presence that I'm trying to build up with videos and such. But Tmarc Jones on Instagram is probably the best thing.
Okay.
And then, of course, I'll be, in terms of coaching and instructing, I will be at Thursday and Friday of this week. I will be up at Thunderhill Raceway with coaching with Hooked on Driving.
Okay.
And then the first weekend of July, I will be at Sonoma Raceway instructing with Lightspeed track events. And then 2 weeks after that, then on the 11th, I will be back at Sonoma Raceway with Hooked on Driving. And then on July 20th and 21st, I will be at Sonoma Raceway with NASA, National Autosport Association, Northern California Division.
Beautiful.
So come out, check me out. I love to talk about cars and racing with anybody. So if anyone has questions, like I say, hit me up on social. If you see me at an event, just come up and say hi. I will talk your ear off, probably.
He's a super enthusiastic guy. Exactly how he's been this whole conversation is how he is in real life. So like he said, don't be scared to go up and say hi. We'll probably be seeing you before too long.
Okay.
And so we'll catch up on some more of those stories. But just wanted to thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you, Paxton. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's going to be it for today, guys. If you enjoyed, like he said, follow him at Tmarc Jones. I'll put that somewhere over here. And then, we'll be back again next week with another interview. Take care.
Yep. Take care. Thank you, Paxton.
Absolutely.